healthcare business podcast from the Coker Group that focuses on solutions to help healthcare organizations effectively navigate the changing healthcare industry landscape.
Welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Coker. Today's episode is a little different, although we've done these in the past. Specifically, it's a kind of a Q&A episode, and it's just going to be me going through, because I have to be honest, I was looking at this question and was a little kind of taken back, kind of surprised. But the more I thought about it, I realized that, this is a question that we folks here at Coker have gotten over the years, and in one variety or the other. And, because it may come from kind of different directions, which I'll explain here in a second. But what we're talking about, or the question is essentially, what actually is healthcare consulting, or what do healthcare consultants do? And again, some kind of variation of that theme of the question, where basically, I think, in theory, a lot of folks kind of have an idea of what consultants do, but are probably still a little curious of what exactly are they doing, and how do they do it, and what's entailed, when it's necessary, things like that. So it's kind of more than just, on the surface of what is healthcare consulting, but I think it kind of starts there. So I'm going to try to answer this question, and I guess I'll start with a general explanation, or kind of a general overview of consulting. And, there's a large range and variety of companies out there and individuals that provide quote unquote consulting services. It can be fairly generic as far as what those firms or individuals do, or it can be very specific to one area. I would say from a very, very high level perspective, it's not very dissimilar from what you would kind of look at other professional services firms as far as kind of general view of a consulting firm, meaning that it's fairly comparable to, say, an accounting firm, or a law firm, or a financial services firm. But where accounting firms provide tax and audit services, and law firms provide legal counsel, and financial services firms provide maybe wealth management or investment banking or something like that, consulting can be fairly broad. And I think that's where probably a lot of the ambiguity or even curiosity comes into play for a lot of folks when they think of this or they hear about consultants. Yeah, and I can't really speak to, we could go on forever kind of breaking down the consulting industry. That's not the point here. I want to talk more about what healthcare consulting means in most cases, and specifically how that applies to what Coker does, because that's, after all, what we're talking about, and where the question was directed. Even within the healthcare consulting world, it can be fairly broad range. There are firms out there that specialize in technology consulting for healthcare entities. There can be firms that focus on financial related services such as valuation or physician compensation, and so on and so forth, down, think about any kind of business operation. And then there are firms like Coker that provide a wide range of kind of all those things and more, kind of full service consulting. And I guess that ties into what Coker does. And this isn't a sales pitch. I think even our own clients sometimes, to a certain extent, can be surprised that they may work with us in one area, say, physician compensation services, but not realize that we also do things in healthcare technology, and we also do things in executive search, helping them identify and recruit executives for, say, hospitals, things like that don't really relate to the primary thing we may be doing with that client, but we certainly do a wide range of those things. And, specifically as far as Coker, we kind of break down what we do into, I guess, a few broad categories. We have financial services, and that gets into your physician comp, your business valuation, your transaction services, mergers and acquisitions, things like that. We have compliance, which touches on just that, compliance services, regulatory compliance matters, coding compliance, et cetera. We have a technology group that does everything from vendor selection to implementation to project management, everything related to health IT. As I mentioned, we have executive search, and then we have also strategy. And Strategy is a broad term in and of itself, and there's a lot that falls within that. And really, it's strategy and operations. And again, that can entail a lot of things, but it may be operational improvement for a healthcare systems employee physician management group. It can be strategic planning. It can be various operational matters related to revenue cycle management. So there's a lot there. And again, the point here is to try to break down all of Coker services, but I did want to cover those categories because I think when people ask, what is it that you guys really do? It's like, well, there's a lot to that. And you got to have to start peeling away that onion a little bit. And you certainly can get pretty in the weeds, which I'll try to avoid here. Yeah, I think it may also help to understand who we work with. Who are we doing this for? Generally speaking, if you think about the organizations, you can basically break down our clients as far as the organizational types to be either a hospital or a medical group. And there could be a number of things in between there, I guess, if you will. For instance, if we're doing something related to a surgery center or an infusion center, well, that's different from a medical group or a hospital, but obviously related. So with those types of what we call allied healthcare services or ancillary services, we work with a lot of those. But we are working with healthcare services organizations, entities that provide services to patients, medical services, and we're working with them on their operational business matters, financial matters. So anyway, it's one of those things that, can also range. A lot of firms out there may work in biotech and pharma, may work with managed care companies and payers and things like that. For us, our focus has always been, and I think will continue to be, the providers and providing services to them that they need. And I think that's another good point as far as, well, just the importance of what we're doing, who we're doing it with, because I think there's a lot of folks out there, whether on the corporate side or even folks that come from the consulting industry, can be a stereotype or a stigma around, why do we need these folks to come in and do this? Why can't we just do it ourselves? Why do we have to pay them money to do this? And what's the difference between us hiring folks that can do this versus employing a firm to do it for us? All those questions, and they're very valid. At the end of the day, there has to be a need and a reason for us to come in and fill a gap or to help with something. Maybe it's just temporary help. A lot of what we do is interim management. We provide services, individuals, experts to fill in gaps for an interim period. Maybe it's just project management where there's a certain initiative going on. It doesn't make sense to hire a team of folks to do this on a permanent basis. It just needs to be for the duration of that particular initiative. Or it's outsourcing. It's a form of outsourcing where folks just, for whatever reason, an organization, whether it's a matter of skill set or capacity or access, whatever it is, needs outside assistance to perform a particular function or achieve a particular objective. And that's typically where we're going to come into play. There are certain things that we do that are kind of in the compliance realm, let's just say, where a third party, an outside third party is required. So, for instance, we work with a lot of hospitals on what we call compensation valuation, which is conducting fair market value assessments and opining on physician compensation arrangements. Well, that's done for compliance purposes for the most part, and it's something that's very specific and niche, and it also needs to be done by an outside third party to get that credibility and validation. We have experts that is just all they do, and it's a very important need of our hospital clients. So, that's something very relevant there. Other times, again, it's more of a nature of we're filling a gap or providing some service on some initiative that is current but not permanent, which kind of makes me think too about what is the structure of how we do this. A lot of people will reach out to us and ask, okay, how does this work? How do we get this going? What's the first step, if you will? And basically we say, we try to have a discussion, and our first objective is to seek to understand what the needs are and validate that we can fulfill those needs. And once we have a good understanding of those needs, if we can validate the value of our role in fulfilling those needs, then we can figure out whatever the structure is, whether it's, hey, this project's going to go on for X amount of time, and the fee it's tied to that is based on the number of hours and manpower utilized and resources allocated and things like that. Or it could be just, hey, this is the project. There are a lot of moving parts to it. Our obligations are listed here, X, Y, and Z, and that equates to a certain dollar amount. We're not selling anything that our clients don't absolutely need and need right then. If there's something else that's needed down the road, then we'll address that when we come to it. But our goal is to get in and have a discussion about how we can fulfill your needs and create value for you right now. Deal with the matters at hand today. And I think that kind of brings me to my last point as far as explaining this. And this is something, in my opinion, personally, I believe that it applies to every consulting firm, and it should be at the forefront of what all these firms, us included, are doing, which is the value of our services. Our role working with clients needs to directly correlate to a value that they ultimately get out of that engagement. And our approach at Coker is to always ensure that everything that we're doing, the way it's structured, the way it's set up, our approach and the different phases of that particular initiative, whatever it may be, is that we're working towards some sort of value target. This effort is going to derive value for our client from it. That's how we can validate ourselves and the need and capability. And I think that's important because while at times sometimes that can be challenging to quantify, and at other times it can just be, you have to kind of take different approaches in terms of how you quantify it, how you ultimately kind of articulate that value and validate it. But we need to show it. And that's something that's very important to us because we see the work that we do with our clients is more than just a vendor relationship. We're not just trying to sell something. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not what we do. We are selling and providing our expertise, our experience, our perspective, and maybe also data is a part of that, and other proprietary approaches and techniques that we've developed over years of doing this, over 30 years now. And all that is added together or aggregated so that value is derived for our clients. And that's very important to us. So different consultants may be able to quantify that or articulate that value in different ways from the way we do it. Certainly, there's probably more ways to do that than just one approach. But yeah, that is something that's very important to us and at the center of everything we do with our clients and the work that we ultimately engage in. So obviously, there's a lot there. I could, again, go on and on about all the variations of consulting, and which I don't think is relevant here, but there's certainly a lot of different ways you could break this down. And I could go on and on about everything Coker does, but again, that's not the point either. I think the idea for this was to provide a little clarity for anyone that just is either not entirely certain what consultants do or just needs a little bit more clarification about how they can do what they do. Hopefully this helps clarify that a little bit. Obviously, we can, get into a lot more depth if anyone has any specific questions around, getting a little bit deeper into any of these things I mentioned or anything else related to what we do and how we do it. Always happy to talk about that. But hopefully it provided a little bit of clarification, if nothing else, on consulting firms. And again, I just want to emphasize that if anybody does have questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to provide more information or go into more detail on any of the things that I mentioned that I may have just covered from a high level here. But other than that, we thank you all for listening and look forward to continuing our discussions in the near future.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Coffee with Coker, and we thank you for listening.
We want to encourage all of our listeners to participate and contribute in the podcast. So if you have any questions on any of the things we discussed in this episode, any of the topics that were presented, please feel free to ask us. Also, we welcome your feedback and suggestions. If you have any ideas related to the material we discussed in this episode, or in any episode, please let us know and we'll make sure to incorporate it. And if you have ideas for topics you'd like to hear more information about in future episodes, please send those suggestions to us. We would love to hear them and we'd love to incorporate them into our future episodes. You can find us online and on social media. Start with our website, and specifically the podcast is coffeewithcoker.com. You can also find that through the main Coker website at cokergroup.com. You can also find us on social media, Twitter at Coker Group, and then on LinkedIn, you can search for Coker Group and find our page and the page for some of our team members as well there. So you can find us and reach out to us a number of places. And then if you want to contact us directly, one of the best ways to do that, email feedback@cokergroup.com. That's feedback@cokergroup.com. And again, we'd love to get your feedback, and we'd love to encourage everyone to subscribe to the podcast so that you can be notified when future episodes are released. We look forward to the next episode, and we look forward to getting your suggestions and feedback on this episode. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to speaking with you again on future episodes.